What up, guys? What up? What up? What's going on, Randy? What a day! I gotta say, today was one hell of a day the Bears had. My goodness, they literally even pulled a 360 on us. That from what we actually woke up. I'm pretty sure we all woke up with the futures. We're like, oh, okay, today's gonna be a nice day. We're gonna have a nice little rebound day. Oh hell no! They literally just pulled the rug on us disgustingly, and that was just the most filthiest day you could probably ask for right now. But I can't say we necessarily didn't see it coming. I think a lot of us pretty much already felt that this was pretty much already turning into a bear market. Basically, we saw the continuation today. Now the question is, what's necessarily coming into store for tomorrow? That's pretty much what it is. PW, what's going on? It's been a while, my guy. Everything's doing good. Kind of trying to just get over the sore throat. I hope it's not a flu kind of stuff, but I'm doing good, man. Doing good. Um, Pretty much some things I want to pretty much touch bases on right now. Those of you that's pretty much been on my life for quite a while, you pretty much know what I'm likely gonna end up getting to. And this is where, when you see the market starting to roll over, this is when you want to start looking at those long-term charts. All right, that's pretty much the biggest key that I'm probably going to say is that a lot of these things are going to be coming down to a lot of the longer time frames. Looking at the dailies, looking at the weeklies, and starting to pick out some of your favorite names is what you really want to be doing right now. Like I'm sure Tom is ideally looking at some of his long-term names, like looking at probably Zim, looking at Intel, probably looking at Silver. Those are the kind of things that you all want to be doing individually right now, and that's exactly what it is that I would recommend right now. So, no, I would probably say those of you that are newer traders, try to gauge away from trying to get interact with day trades more so, especially in this kind of market and volatility, because you're gonna enter a trade and you're likely gonna see that volatility, and it may not end up being in your favor. So, those of you that are newer traders, that's pretty much what I will preference by saying. Outside of that, again, look to pretty much pick out your favorite names. I think I picked out a few. I'm eyeing up AMD. I'm eyeing Disney right now. I think I saw one that I potentially liked for a swing. I did like United Airlines. That's actually one that I caught. Some decent flow that came in, some unusual flow, and I did like that one in particular. So those are things that I'm looking at. I haven't been day trading as much per se. Obviously, I pretty much showed yesterday, those of you that saw my live yesterday, I came on here showing you that ascending broadening wedge action. That was typically basically a bearish pattern. And what did we get? We got the nice little morning pop that we all woke up to. And then they ended up just flushing us right through that 4018 level on respect to my ES chart that I showed yesterday. So that's pretty much what I ended up sawing. Now, kind of just getting into the SPY chart because I just flip over to SPY. What I actually pretty much noticed, and this may be something that I kind of want to just highlight here for you guys. If you guys actually use a volume profile, if you actually notice, right around that right around the 4121 level, that 4018 level that we ended up having that little rug pull, you want to say, you actually notice the volume node here off of this volume profile. That was basically what I actually noticed, was that once we started to rug pull, you started to see the volume nodes. They literally started to get smaller and smaller. And what that does is that with that decreased volume, it literally just escalates that pressure to the downside. That selling pressure just starts to mount on us. That's why you started to see us pretty much just literally just free fall. That's exactly what it felt like. It felt like a free fall. And we just started to just take a roller coaster straight down. But what was the interesting part is that once you started to see the volume nodes start to pick up back here, and this is right around roughly around the 3976-ish level, 3980 level, you actually noticed that you had a volume node that actually started to increase. And that's when you saw that reflective bounce that we had right into power hour. If you saw and you probably looked at it right in power hour start, you're like, what the hell is this? Maybe we're going to get an intraday reversal, which was necessarily kind of a little bit of short lived, but that was a strong move and that was a reflexive move off of a key level, off of that 3980 level. And that's exactly what you saw as a quick reflexive move intraday into the close there. So that's what I'm actually looking at. That was pretty much what caught my attention towards the end of the day, just trying to see what, from a technical standpoint, why did we particularly end up getting that erratic bounce in towards the end of the day. That's exactly where we end up hitting a very critical level, and you could see a pretty much a larger volume node than when we ended up free falling through. All right, so that's the first thing that I kind of wanted to highlight. Now going into tomorrow, I can see a little bit of a bounce here coming into tomorrow, and that's going to be similar to what we potentially saw this morning. You saw the little morning bounce. We all woke up to futures thinking we're going to get a decent rebound kind of day. I particularly think that we're going to end up seeing exactly the same kind of rug pull action that we got this morning. So I would not be surprised to see that we end up trying to get back above this 4,000 mark on ES here. We could probably push close enough to what is right around 40.26. And then we'll see that 4018 level yet again play a factor as it was acting as support before. It may end up acting as resistance this time, and then we should get the continuation right back to the downside. In which, of course, I still have key levels marked to the downside, looking at 39.17, 39.88, and 38.83. All right. And I know that Tom is looking for more blood, and I'm sure he probably swinged his entire portfolio with puts. And I wouldn't actually necessarily blame him for that matter. But yes, I right now, as you see it, the Bears are in full control right now. All right. So that's pretty much the biggest picture. Those of you that are swinging weeklies and you're likely going against the trend, I'm gonna pray for you. All right, because that's not very wise to do that right now in this kind of market environment. And if you did end up trying to go against the trend, the overall trend, then I would have hoped you at least had the dignity to go for next week expiration, not this week. All right, so that's pretty much a rookie mistake. If you did do that and you end up going this week expiration, you may end up paying the penalty, and you may end up learning the hard way. All right, so that's pretty much what I would pretty much wanted to highlight. Pretty much the other highlight of the morning was the squeeze plays. I think Tom was pretty much on point with those since since actually the beginning of the week more so. We saw the beautiful move out of Phase, FAZE. That was a beautiful squeeze that we had, but it was short lived. We had the nice little, I think, $6, $7 pop in the morning, and then it immediately faded with the broader market. I'm still waiting on Weber. That's another one. We were pretty much having a tough time getting over. I think it was roughly around that 10:30 mark, and we faded that eventually as well with the broader market. So, I mean, beautiful moves that were setting up. FaZe got the early move. Weber was not able to pretty much get that move intraday, as we just tumbled with the broader market. And then the other one that's also pretty much on watch is also Sava. That's the one that's pretty much expecting the with the clinical trial, expecting FDA news. And so we're going to see at what point that ends up coming out. And that should be a catalyst to pretty much catapult that stock to go higher. But that may not end up having a timetable set. All we know is that the data is expected to come out by the year end. So that's pretty much one. You pretty much try to buy it off support. And I would likely say to get some shares for your long term portfolio on that one. All right. So that's pretty much just hindsight. Going into tomorrow also that just pretty much caught my attention. The only two things that I kind of caught my attention in terms of catalyst tomorrow. We do have Mester that's speaking tomorrow morning, if I'm not mistaken, before it's pre-market, roughly around 8 a.m. Eastern. So that's something to keep in mind. And then the other thing is just crude oil inventories that we do have as well coming up. All right, so that's going to be another highlight for tomorrow. I did see we had, I believe, an XOP whale alert that came out today. That was for puts. So that may be an anticipation for the crude oil inventories tomorrow. So we'll see how that ends up playing out, if the whale was actually correct or if that ends up being wrong. So that'll be something we pay attention to as well. The other thing that's just hindsight as well that kind of caught my attention in terms of catalyst, other than tomorrow, was also pretty much paying attention to what we have for Thursday, and that was the jobless claims. So I was pretty much reading up, and I actually noticed that it looks like the market does want to hear at what point jobless claims are actually going to tick higher, in which is going to indicate that the Fed tightening is actually pretty much having an impact if the jobless claims number do start to tick up higher. So that's something that I do think could be a catalyst. Now, in favor of that, it could end up playing in a way that we end up seeing a rebound day tomorrow that we didn't necessarily get from looking at this morning. And then we end up seeing an onslaught on Thursday on the back end of jobless claims possibly ticking up. So that's just looking at looking into the future, seeing what possible catalysts could end up playing a factor into market price action. That's one thing that I am paying attention to. So if we end up having a rebound day tomorrow, I would not be surprised if on Thursday we just get slaughtered. All right. Um. Wait. Who is speaking tomorrow? That is Mester speaking tomorrow at 8 a.m. So that's Fed speaker. Mester is going to be speaking. All right. So that, I mean, you'll likely end up seeing pre-market action before the market opens, so you already know what damage was already pretty much done. If you're swinging calls, like I said, and you're doing same week expiration, that's where you're living dangerously. All right. Again, those of you that kind of just joined in late, I did say remember to pretty much look at larger time frames right now. Everything's gonna move with the broader market. One thing I could probably pretty much highlight for you guys was looking at SMH. I did have that on my watch list rather early this morning. I was pretty much looking to see whether the semis were actually going to continue to show strength off this morning gap up that we had, or if they're going to end up rolling over. Pretty much a little bit of a similar situation. Once you ended up cracking below this 219 spot, you basically saw that lower volume node right around that 217, and we got the flush that ended up breaking us down, and the reflexive move that I just pretty much highlighted off of ES. So that's pretty much something I'm also going to be watching tomorrow. I could see a little bit of a retracement back up towards 219 on SMH if we do get a little bit of a morning dead cat bounce per se. I'm looking to pretty much see a rebound up towards 219, which I think should end up acting as a morning supply, and then we'll end up to see if that ends up acting as a supply, and we see a rollover just as an instance of what we saw today. So 219 is that big level that you definitely want to keep an eye on for SMH, and that'll kind of give you your gauge for the semis going into tomorrow morning. All right. So otherwise, if we get over the 219 mark for SMH, then I do think that the semis overall will have some better continuation and a better rebound day going into tomorrow. All right. Otherwise, 219 rejects, we have more blood, and the Bears continue to have their fun. All right, so that's what I'm going to continue to watch off of SMH. I know everyone was pretty much watching and keeping an eye on Tesla here. That was just a disgusting breakdown. You found your support right around this 273 mark once we were not able to pretty much make a higher high off of yesterday's price action. We ended up just breaking down. That was disgustingly. And of course, if you actually notice, you had the higher volume node here right around this 286 mark. And once you entered into that low volume node, you flushed right down until you had a little bit of a decent volume node. Right around this 272 mark was where you pretty much caught a bounce and you saw the reflexive move. So that's pretty much what I ended up noticing off of that. What I am going to be looking for, resistance yet again. Let's see if we end up getting some resistance right around this 279 half is what I'm going to be looking at, in which you're going to see some rather relative weakness earlier on, and then we should end up seeing that reject that 279.5, and we're going to take another leg lower. So that's going to be pretty much discussing if that ends up happening, and that was actually exactly what we saw this morning. Even though we ended up having the nice little gap up this morning, Tesla started to show that relative weakness rather sooner than everything else in the broader market. So that ended up catching my attention. But next key level below that I'm particularly watching is right going to be around this 264 level. I think you'll catch a dead cat there, but there's not much holding this up until this gap fill you have below, which is basically below this 254, 255 you could say. I do think that we're going to end up filling this gap rather quickly. And you can also see that the volume nodes are rather very light right here. There's very low volume nodes right here, and you're likely just going to flush right through it. Now, at what point that ends up happening, could it be in the sense of the catalyst, like I mentioned on Thursday, being a catapult for more market volatility, or do we just continue to just melt down right going into tomorrow? All right, so that's pretty much just highlights, just key things that I pretty much caught my attention on. Other than that, not too much else that really is in my zone right now that's caught my attention. Otherwise, I could probably point to Amazon. I think everyone was looking at this massive gap fill on Amazon, and this is one that I know that I believe it was also a newsletter play from Tom. So we got the nice little breakdown. Of course, another one that got the little reflexive move off of ES. But you do have more ways down towards this gap fill here. I don't expect meaningful support to actually kick in until you get down towards 123. So which is roughly near $6 move to the downside still on the table. And you see the correlation with Tesla still moving down towards the gap fill, Amazon still making its move to complete the gap fill. It does signal that we do have more downside potential to come. All right. So what you're looking at is pretty much highlighting your resistance levels, looking to see if we end up breaking above those resistance levels tomorrow morning, if in fact it's a rebound day tomorrow, or do we end up rejecting those specific resistance levels and we see the next leg lower to make a newer low here. All right. Other than that, though, I think that's pretty much just keeping it simple as I can right now. We can basically see the broader markets moving along with each other right now. But the biggest thing is highlighting just getting those key resistance levels tomorrow. If we get the morning gap up like we had today again, let's see if we can pretty much get continuation, or do we get the rollover exactly like how we did this morning. All right. Other than that, though, I will leave it short and simple right there. We'll call it a day. Let's see. You guys actually mentioned one ticker. All right, share. I'll take a look at that one ticker for you real quick, and then we'll call it a wrap. Let's see. CFVI. I have no idea what ticker this is. Is this a squeeze ticker? Because it definitely looks like one. It certainly looks like a squeeze ticker, and it looks like I looked at this quite a while back. This is dating back to like March of this year. Wow, that's the last time I looked at this. Well, I do see you actually went into quite some resistance. If you look at the volume node, you could basically see the resistance that you ended up hitting into, and you can see the gnarly rejection that you got today off of that 11 high mark, close enough to $12 that you rejected off of. Now, support wise, I would definitely want to see this whole support here, right around this 10.71 mark, is what I'm looking at for support. If you can't hold the 10.71 mark, then you're likely going to give back this entire daily candle that you had from basically from yesterday, and that's going to end up wiping this out to be basically a quote unquote no pump and dump type scenario. Otherwise, again, if you can't hold 1071, it's going to wipe it all out. Otherwise, you want to end up basically reclaiming over 11 half, and you can make the push up above that $12 resistance that you had. And the next level of resistance that I'll be watching above $12 will be at 1240. Is going to be my next resistance level. And that should end up above the 1240. Then that should catapult you to see that parabolic move, which what I assume that you're pretty much looking at. All right. Above the 1240, then I do have your resistance sitting up here right around 13 half. All right. Thank you on those puts yesterday on SPY. Hopefully that did help you. That was pretty much what I was hoping everyone would pretty much get the idea, and that's why I know those of you that pretty much know me. I'm very big on just keeping it simple, keeping it pattern related. You also know that I'm a very big fan of pretty much the opposite of the pattern I showed you. There's an ascending broadening channel, which is basically a bearish one, but my favorite is typically the bearish ascending what am I saying that wrong? Descending broadening wedge is my favorite. So there's ascending and there's descending. The ascending is bearish, descending is bullish. Which one is my favorite? So that's pretty much something that hopefully you guys can pretty much go through, kind of look at those kind of wedges and be able to draw that out yourself, because I think that would definitely be a lot helpful for each and one of you individually. All right. Other than that, though, I will leave it as is. I will conclude today's session. Other than that, appreciate you guys joining as always.